During the First World War, 60,000 Australian soldiers were killed and 155,000 wounded. Few letters home convey the horror of the front line better than those of Private Arthur Ween. The young Australian went on to translate one of the greatest war novels of the 20th century, All Quiet on the Western Front, and now his family is ensuring his legacy won't be forgotten. Rebecca Bailey reports.
Down I went to the waist in sticky mud and cold water. All the time there was a crack, whiz, click, rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat of rifles and machine guns.
People kept his letters because they regarded them as something unique.
"19 is too young for most fellows to be in this outfit, but 17 is cruelty. For the experiences destroy youth outright."
He brought the war back with him, and it lived with him ever after.
The First World War was into its second year, and the Anzacs Gallipoli campaign was in its final weeks when 18-year-old university student Private Arthur Ween from Sydney's North Shore enlisted in the Australian Imperial Forces.
He was involved in many battles and was awarded the military medal 3 times, only one of 15 Australians to be so honoured.
My father was an exceptional person, had an exceptional perception, was able to write it all down, and so few of us can. When you read the letters, you have a realisation, a different realisation of what the world is.
Private Arthur Ween was no typical soldier. A linguist and writer, he wrote thousands of letters, and he translated from German one of the 20th century's greatest anti-war novels, All Quiet on the Western Front.
This is his great literary achievement. He made that novel. He made All Quiet on the Western Front a English language reading hit.
Get them torn all that.
There's this one, the photograph of the battalion being moved from Egypt to France, and that person in the Muslim hat's Arthur, and he's reading a book.
Despite his extraordinary literary talents and achievements, Arthur Ween is little known in Australia.
And what they're actually doing.
His family has kept his letters and is now publishing a book in the hope that his legacy is never lost.
Right.
It certainly tells a story about the ill effects of being a soldier in war and being subjected to the most horrendous things over a period of time which many people never recover from.
Tanya Crothers has spent 8 years collating the letters. The letters detail her uncle's life from when he sailed for Europe in December 1915 to his death in 1971.
Our feet, sinking into soft sand, soon began to chafe and blister, tingle and burn intolerably.
Serving with the 54th Battalion, Ween describes the Australians' harsh training in Egypt.
A chap lying in a collapsed and miserable condition against his pack just behind me called out, "You making your will, mate?" I merely ignored him.
Within a day of reaching the Western Front, Arthur Ween was thrown into Australia's most disastrous 24 hours at war.
To see me bowl head over heels into a shell crater in our ditch in no man's land. I got out in the end, though, and cantered across the German trenches where I had much better luck with their barbed wire.
In one day at Fromelles, the Australians suffered 5,500 casualties in a battle military historian Michael McKernan says was botched in both its planning and execution. But in the midst of such horror, Private Ween, a signaller, displayed great valour.
He spent almost the entire battle time in no man's land repairing the telephone wires while shells and artillery and machine guns and all that sort of stuff are going all about him. And for that he was awarded his first military medal.
Within months, Private Ween found himself at the Somme.
One of our signallers, the linesman, got stuck in the mud. He sank down to his waist and had to be digged out, one leg at a time. I've not had linesmen on the Somme and am duly grateful. There's nothing so abominable.
Well, he'd just blow off to father, because he was a clergyman and Christian, you see, and Arthur, going through what he was going through, was just wanting to say, where's this God?
Marie Arthur is Arthur Ween's youngest sister, born when her brother was serving at the Western Front.
Dear lady, many a time have I tried to figure out what you are like.
Now 95, Marie Arthur's the last survivor of her generation and still reads the letter her brother wrote to her from the front when she was just a few weeks old.
Goodbye, little sister. Arthur W. Ween. All his brothers and sisters got letters, and they wrote to him, and he'd write, always answered them. And he'd say, things are a bit busy here, meaning that the war was pretty hot.
Isn't this war a frightful business, Lily? It's terrible to think of all the poor innocents in the desolate homes of Germany, where heartbreaking sorrow and misery forced their admittance last night.
It was perhaps his empathetic and sensitive nature which made Arthur Ween the perfect translator for Erich Maria Remarque's classic German novel, All Quiet on the Western Front, which was made into the 1930 Oscar-winning film of the same name.
Let's do something! Let's go after him! Sit down!
Arthur Ween coined the phrase All Quiet on the Western Front. His title a far cry from the original German, which directly translated as No News in the West.
You can go down the shops and somebody will say, we're talking about tomatoes or something, and they'll say it's all quiet on the Western Front. It's part of the language.
But nobody who hadn't been through what Arthur Ween had endured could have given the book the feel that he gives it. It comes entirely out of his own war experience.
After the war, Arthur Ween became a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University and worked as the keeper of the library at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. His appears to have been a happy family life, but Gretchen Ween remembers a man haunted by the memories of the Great War and suffering writer's block, unable to live up to his own expectations.
To me, that represents what all those men in war carry with them forever. And it must affect all the communities that they go back into. And it's just awful.
While her parents stayed in England, Gretchen Ween was sent back to Australia during the Second World War to be brought up by her grandparents. She says her father's letters kept the family together.
I remember so little of the actual personal contacts that the letters are a reality which I wouldn't have had otherwise.